Once again, left, right, out. um, Try to keep this YouTube friendly. I don't know if we can, but because we're going to talk about Rogan, Joe Rogan, a little bit. I don't know what the mainstream's ass hairs are up for when it comes to him. If you know him or if you listen to him for any period of time, which I have, I've listened to him back when he was. I don't know, whenever he started, because he was sponsored by like the Fleshlight of all things. He was sponsored by some weird companies, and he used to just have a lot of other comedians. I mean, it was just like joking around, and then he kind of evolved. He'd get like they were into alternative histories and whatnot. So they get guys like Graham Hancock on. That's when it started getting the little more famous people. Some people that wanted to like. Or I think there's some other people that, Graham Hancock's one that stands out to me, where you start getting these scientists, and some other people started really taking notice of his podcast. But I mean, it could be somebody else. He had, I remember Joey Diaz on there a lot. Is hilarious. But so now it's just like kind of became this big juggernaut. And I think he recognizes that. He sees that. And one thing after the years of listening to him is he's just like an average guy asking questions. Granted, he used to be considered more of a leftist, and in my opinion, there's a lot of things I didn't agree with him politically, but I still listened to him because I like the fact that he'd have these other opinions on, whether it be like a Tulsi Gabbard or Bernie Sanders, and then who was a libertarian candidate a number of years ago. He screwed up Aleppo, I guess. Gary Johnson. He had Gary Johnson on, and then. Dan Crenshaw, he had a variety of people from various walks of life. Those are just political, but he'd bring on guys that've been in combat. He'd bring on these guys that've done these health, Dr. Rhonda Patrick and the likes of that. Other guys that have like done cool adventures. Just overall, just like people you want to go talk with and have a drink with. And he just asks questions. So when he brings on like these doctors that are talking about certain things, he's had them on before, whether we talked about different diets or like Dr. Rhonda Patrick have some studies like on whatever the heat shock protein thing. Where I remember that like saunas and intermediate fasting, and those can be controversial at times too. But he has these other doctors on because that's what people are. They're scouring the internet, they're finding these topics and nobody's talking about them, so he's getting these people on that are experts about it and asking questions. So when he has like a Dr. Peter McCullough on or Dr. Robert Malone and other ones, he had Dr. Sandra Gupta on, which would be countering those two. So I mean, he's had a lot of different opinions and he's just asking questions, and it's interesting. Like it reminds me of if you still have this, is awesome having a family around, or a dad or brothers, or just guys like good friends, and hanging around and shooting the shit and talking about things. And maybe one of you guys is an expert on one thing, maybe you guys are expert, maybe you guys are not expert. You're just having a good time conversing and learning from each other in various ways, or bringing up stuff and just talking about the mysteries of the world, whatever it is. That's what his thing is. His podcast is. I don't know what the mainstream media is like, turning it into some kind of opinion manufacturer podcast that somehow he's dictating to people what they should think. And in fact, it is the exact opposite in my opinion. Usually, like myself, I went into listening to him and I have my own opinion, and granted I've seen him evolve more towards my opinions, but I go in there and I listen to it, and maybe it has changed the way I think a little bit, but it gives me a different perspective from another person that doesn't. I mean, maybe he thinks a lot more like me now, but before then he didn't. And he'd bring on people that would. Maybe I could counter their arguments or whatever, but I get to hear that opinion, and whether you agree with it or disagree with it doesn't really matter. I mean, we should be able to hear you should have to hear, or not have to, but you should be able to hear other opinions outside what the government narrative is, or whatever they call the mainstream science, or whoever the case may be, because there's always two sides of the coin, and whether you like this guy or not. I think he's a liberal, but RFK, he's the one who just wrote that book about Fauci or whatnot. But I remember listening to him. He was talking about, because he's an attorney, or having people on the stand. He'd have experts and they'd have experts, very credentialed individuals, but with the same evidence coming to two different opinions. I mean, that's just how we flesh out what we consider the truth or the best course of action and things, is having different varying opinions and having them see which one wins the day. So, in my opinion, I watched Joe's Instagram response today, and it was, I think he handled that pretty well. I mean, but the thing I think he could do better, the only thing I could think they would do any good, and not better because of the mainstream wanting him to whatever put more restrictions on his channel or to be canceled or anything. It'd be better if, and I think he's tried to do this, is have debates where you get two opposing views. Like, would a Sandra Gupta like to go on there with a Peter McCullough and have a really a sit down and have a debate on the current prevalent science or what's going on, and maybe we come to some consistency. Maybe we can find some real answers. I mean, that's the only thing I could think that would be better. And the people that are calling for him to get canceled, they wouldn't even accept that, I bet. But the only people I've talked to, like, to be totally honest, that want him canceled are they're females, and they haven't ever listened to him. They just read what was put on the media page that somehow he's spreading lies, which Rogan just asked questions. And he has challenged some of what they say, even if they're supposed experts. I listened to the Peter McCullough thing. He challenged him on a couple things, his assertions. Listened to the Sanjay Gupta one. He challenged him and proved him wrong on a couple of things. But that doesn't mean that guy isn't an expert in his field. I mean, that's why I'm against credentialism. You should win the argument. But anyway, so Rogan serves a vital role as the media becomes more of a propaganda tool. Guys like Rogan, not just Rogan. I know he's the pinnacle of this, or he's the tip of the spear that everybody's attacking at the moment. But anyway, let's go on. Let's talk about the stock market. The stock market was up today. Dow was up like 400 something points. The S&P was up, 84 roughly, almost 2% on the S&P, which is an incredible move. VIX got slammed today, which I'm adding on my position on some volatility stuff, and then also some downside S&P stuff that I was making some money on this last week. So I'm going to keep that up, because here's what came out. I know some people are calling for a rally, and I have called for that. Like, I was waiting for this bear market type rally, this relief rally, after all these shorts are in here pushing it down, because usually they cover. You got so much profit, you might as well cover and take some of that off the table. But the overall theme of this really hasn't changed. I will say one thing that goes counter to my argument. So, the overall theme, the Fed wants to, or they're out there saying they're going to rein in their balance sheet. They're going to raise interest rates. But here's the thing: that last week when they came out with their balance sheet, it's up like $100 billion for the month or something like that, which is incredible, because supposedly we've been tapering this whole time. And somehow their balance sheet is just still continues to grow leaps and bounds. $100 billion, which that's almost, granted, I know they're in the treasury market, but that's incredible to me when we're supposed to be tapering and getting out of, the MBS stuff and straight injections of buying treasuries or whatnot. I know they're in there anyway. That's how you manipulate the interest rate to begin with, but I don't know. I don't know what was going on, because they're talking taper, but yet their balance sheet's still growing. And then you extrapolate that down, the fractional reserve system, and you look at the credit lines that people have, and what that translates to in money creation. But anyway, so one of the presidents, I believe he's the Atlanta Fed president, came out and said they might even do like a half point, which half a point. Like, that's going to do anything. It will shock the market, because they are anticipating quarter points, and this guy comes out if they actually did a half point. But like I said, I don't think the Fed can even get to like 1.25%, or my original thing was 1.5%. I don't even think they can get to 1.25% on this thing without like getting wheels turned off. Because you look at how fragile everything is, and especially on the tech side of things, or there's a lot of companies that are not really making a profit, and they're not doing so hot. And they rely on being able to roll debt over and whatnot. And if you raise that up to, which is a market, they need to raise it up to a market level. Otherwise, we're going to eventually this will crash anyway, just more horrifically than it would. But as you raise that up, the cost for them increases at a certain rate as well. But you also couple that because there's a lot of other companies that are maybe not in the tech sector that are like that too. Because I think the last statistic is like a third of it was it SP or maybe I can't remember. It was an astronomical number in reality. It was over a third of companies are like zombie companies. You think about when they're rolling over debt just to stay alive. This is going to be crazy. So I don't think they can get to even 1.25, and I think they'll be reversing. And like we're seeing right now, the supposedly they're tapering. The balance sheet's still going up. I thought they were going to be done, and then just be in there, setting interest rates in the market that way. But maybe they are. Maybe that's how they're. Maybe that's how they have to do it. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just shooting off the hip here on that because I haven't really looked into it. I just noticed their balance sheet was going up. I was like, well, that's odd because they're supposed to be tapering all this QE out of here. But what I'm looking for now, I mean, we're not going to see the real crash yet, one way or the other, because the Treasury market, I mean, the bond markets, the Treasury market itself, the 10-year, everything looks pretty stable. Except if they bump that up, we'll see a little shock in there. But the real change, I believe, is when they come in the next time. Because we've got so much money. It's like when they go up there and they break the system and they come back in with QE. Like that is probably going to be the actual crash because it's like how many trillions of dollars can we possibly throw out there? Because then the next time they come to rescue this thing, you look at how much they put into it to rescue it this time. And then the last time, every time it's that much more, and it's starting to become exponentially going up further. So you think about now what it was, however many trillions of dollars they expanded their balance sheet from whatever it was originally when 20 years ago when this started, a few hundred billion or whatever it was. I'm shooting off the hip here, so correct me. I mean, I'm sure you could look it up. I know it was in hundreds of billions, and now we're in God knows 8 trillion something. You think about the next step. Every crisis that ironically is manufactured by them is then they come in and they have in order to deliver the medicine to the patient there it has to be ever increasing doses because the system itself becomes has its own not immunity but its own tolerance to that now. But we'll see. This is, like I said, you got to be hedged. You got to be ready to go and on the ball on this stuff. And it's a good time. I like volatility. It's it's a good way to make money. And we need that. Oil prices, you got to look at that as well. Oil seems up there. We don't know what's going on in Ukraine. We don't know what's going on around the Taiwan area. But Ukraine seems to be more pressing. It seems like they're really banging the war drums on that. The only thing I could say on that is just look outside our own media. Even check RT. Look at what the Russians are saying over there, their media. In fact, you get some really good knowledge. There's from that side of things if you open your mind. And it's not a bad thing either. Like, if you consider the Russians enemies, let's just say that tactically it's good to understand what your enemy's thinking. Not to say that RT's got some good reporting in general. And yeah, there's a few things you got to look at, like where they kind of hinge some of the articles, but it's good to understand that train of thought as well. So even if they had a straight Russian propaganda deal, I would take a gander at it just to more better understand what they're thinking. And then the same thing with the Ukrainians. You want to understand all sides so you understand the dynamics, especially if you're going to go into a war. I mean, we shoot from the hip, and we see where that gets us, right? Anyway, I'll talk to you later. Peace out.